Now, there are conflicting reports over an attack on the Ukrainian city of Dnipro overnight. Ukraine says it was targeted by a Russian intercontinental ballistic missile. There's been no independent verification of this. And CBS News in America is reporting that US officials say it was a shorter range ballistic missile. There's been no comment from the Kremlin on this specifically. If confirmed, though, it would be the first time this type of weapon has been used in conflict. The Ukrainian Air Force says Dnipro was also targeted by a hypersonic ballistic missile and 7 cruise missiles, 6 of which it said were shot down. The attack follows the US decision to allow the use of long-range missiles to attack Russian territory. Moscow has repeatedly said the use of Western weapons to strike territory far from the border would be a major escalation of the conflict. Russia has also claimed it shot down 2 British-made Storm Shadow missiles. Well, let's speak now to our Eastern Europe correspondent, Sarah Rainsford, who's monitoring events for us from Warsaw. Sarah, hello to you. And I want to get a sense, first of all, of reaction there in Poland and what you're hearing from sources there about what's been happening in Ukraine.
Yeah, there's no clarity as yet about what exactly the missile that was fired, or the controversial missile at least that was fired at Dnipro overnight actually was. Certainly we know there was a barrage of missiles, and Ukraine's air forces has claimed that that included an intercontinental ballistic missile, which would be a significant step, because it would be, if confirmed, the first time such a missile had been used in Ukraine, or indeed in warfare more generally, which obviously is quite a significant step. But there is a Western official, a certain official who should know these things, who is playing that down completely and saying, no, this was a ballistic missile, but not intercontinental. So it's possible that this entire dispute is a sort of technical one, really, about the actual range of this missile, which could be on the cusp of 2 different categories. But ultimately, this is all coming, of course, in quite a complex but a worrying context. And that context is the fact that Ukraine is now firing Western-supplied missiles into Russia, and Russia is beginning to respond in different ways. And Russia, of course, sending very strong signals of the potential for it to escalate its response. And I think the whole idea of all of this, from Russia at least, is that it is trying to frighten Western allies off from helping Ukraine with these missiles that they've been supplying. It's trying to send a message that Russia has the capacity to keep escalating its response. And it's interesting just looking at how Western leaders, the European leaders generally here in Poland and right through to France and Germany, are responding to that. So far, recent comments that have been made both here in Warsaw and elsewhere suggest that at the moment, there is a solid and united response, which is that Western allies of Ukraine are refusing to be intimidated. That was the words of the French foreign minister speaking here in Warsaw just a couple of days ago.
Sarah, thank you very much for that. Sarah Rainsford, our Eastern Europe correspondent. Well, let's speak now to Michael Bossacu, Global Affairs Analyst and Senior Fellow at the Atlantic Council. Good to have you with us. And do you think Western allies will be concerned, if not frightened off, by this latest discussion about the type of missile that was targeted towards Ukraine? President Zelensky, just to add to the slight confusion over this, is saying it has all the characteristics, speed, altitude of an intercontinental ballistic missile. A new Russian rocket, he calls it.
Good to be with you. Well, first of all, whatever arrived in the evening, we've just been put on alert all over Ukraine, but specifically Odessa, that another missile is on its way from the very airfield far deep inside Russia from where this alleged ICBM came from. So if I have to bolt during the interview, you'll know why. But I think whatever was used was a high-powered long-distance missile, and it fits into a pattern of Russia using a different mix of high-powered missiles, medium, short range, but also a range of drones now, some of which can demolish a whole building. We have not seen that before. In terms of Western response, well, I think they need to answer the question as why they waited so long to arm Ukraine right now with these types of missiles that can strike deeper into Russia. Because in a way, they've provided escalation themselves by not deterring Russia. So Russia feels now that it has no more red lines, that it can do whatever it wants. And you can imagine the feeling here in Odessa and other Ukrainian cities right now. I have never experienced this height of anxiety as I do right now among neighbors and friends here. It's just a feeling that we don't know what will happen next. And one more thing, if I may, most of Odessa is in a power blackout right now. Wi-Fi has almost gone out the window, as well as mobile signals. Very difficult, strikes very hard in such a highly digitized economy.
Michael, I'm very conscious of the situation you're in. Are you okay for me to ask you another question, or do you need to go?
Yes, please go ahead.
Yeah, interesting line you said there in that answer. Russia feels it has no more red lines. To what extent, though, do you think Russia is waiting for President-elect Trump to take office again and to see what he has to say about the situation?
Well, I think Ukraine is in trouble in that sense because Mr. Trump's subversiveness to Mr. Putin has no floor. And I think he will try to keep him on as much as he can as a buddy. But I think in between now and then, we're going to see a lot of developments, not only in Washington from the lame duck Biden administration, but also from countries like the UK. I mean, Prime Minister Starmer today made it really clear that the UK has to play a far bigger role, not only Ukraine, but elsewhere, and that the United Kingdom will give Ukraine whatever it needs for as long as it needs. And I noticed there was also multi-party support for that. So
what kind of
that would be very encouraging.
What kind of developments do you mean, Michael?
I think we have to reach a point where more of these longer-range missiles are provided, because there is a shortage of them worldwide right now. We're not sure how many Ukraine has, but I think the Ukrainians feel that they need to strike further into Russia, where these launch pads are being used to send missiles and drones this way. And also possibly even that Kerch Strait Bridge. It's a very, very critical conduit between Russia and Crimea to send Russian military equipment to Crimea to be fired here.
Whatever happens next, Michael, and we heard the UK Defence Secretary talk about this earlier today. He was saying that the front line at the moment is more difficult than it has been since the start of the war. And he was talking about the offensives by Russia in that sense, pushing forward. There's going to be a desire, an effort on both sides, Russia and Ukraine, to gain the upper hand as much as they can in the context of a new president, because, you know, if one is in a stronger position, one is in a weaker position, when President Trump takes office in the White House again, then that could, you know, mean different things, couldn't it?
Absolutely. I think, Nita, what we may see happen between now and then as well, Inauguration Day, is other powers who have been involved on and off in the war, such as Saudi Arabia, Qatar, Turkey, to intervene and try and bring, first of all, to cool heads down, but also try and bring some kind of negotiations in order. Because, you know, let's not forget, I mean, just moments ago, I walked by the port of Odessa and there was almost zero activity. A lot of ship owners don't feel safe coming here anymore, and that affects the world. It will eventually affect households around the world. And meanwhile, the Russians are, as we speak, because I checked, are sending oil from one of their ports towards the EU. So there's a whole mix of things. But I think at the end of the day, Western leaders, in order that they feel they have the support of their voters, their electorate, have to explain succinctly what is going on and how this may impact people worldwide, including a lot of countries on the brink of starvation, if these key ports like Odessa are cut off by the Russians.
OK, Michael, thank you for your thoughts today. Do stay safe there. Michael Bossacu from the Atlantic Council.